Now this lesson is about luster, and I just love this effect. Luster is the sense that light is sweeping across the surface, bouncing, or that there's a very soft reflective glow. It's different from luminosity. If you remember luminosity, there's a glow from underneath the surface of warmth or light, and with luster, the light source is from above or to the side. Now you can read about luster in my book, The Quilter's Color Club, and on page 31, please look at the two quilts by Charlotte Pater. They're wonderfully lustrous. So to create luster in a traditional sense, you would piece very closely related values, going from light to medium to dark and back to light again. That takes a lot of time, so I've tried to figure out a way to cheat, and thankfully the fabric manufacturers have accommodated us. One of the ways to cheat is a printed gradated stripe. This is actually all I have left of this wonderful Michael James stripe. But you can see how it changes in value and in color. And there's still quite a bit of contrast, so you would get the sense of luster if you saw this in the border of a quilt from across the room. This little quilt is in my book. It's one of the projects, Squares and Stripes. I'm not going to hold it up too high, but I have used the Michael James stripe in the borders, and it's a very limited sense of luster because the values are really closely related. They're not that different, but where the lightest values are, you get the sense of a very gentle highlight. Now I also had the stripes aligned vertically and horizontally to suggest that there's a plane of striped color underneath the blocks. It's a very subtle effect, but those are the kinds of things that really make a difference. So the second way to cheat, if you're not using printed lustrous stripes, is with ombres. Now we've had a wonderful selection of ombres in the last few years. Ombres gradate in value or color and value. And this is one from Moda, and you can see that the color changes wonderfully, and there's a little sense of lightness between the colors as they shift, and that gives it a liveliness, kind of an animation and a vitality that you wouldn't see if it were just a plain fabric. Here's another one. This is Carol Breyer Fallert's Gradations. A very soft sense of glow. You can see the slight shift in value, but quite a bit of a shift in color, and again, just wonderful to use in these blocks. And a Daiwabo, much brighter, quite bright. It has the darkest magenta where the salvages are, and on your left, where my right hand is, that's the fold of the fabric. So you can see it shifts in color and value, and is very, very intense. So let's look at one block. This is that double 4 patch again, and I've used the Daiwabo in the background, and I've cut the triangles so that the lighter areas are on the right side of the block and the darker areas are on the left side. And I think that creates a sense of a sweep of light, very gentle light, underneath the block going from right to left. And if it were just a plain lilac or lavender background, I don't think you would notice it. This gives it depth and movement. We love to see those effects in quilts. Here's a larger block using the Carol Breyer Fallert, and again the shift in value is very subtle. It's not a great contrast from light to darker, but the way the colors shift, you can orient the strips and cut them so that you can get that sense of flow. Another one with an ombre fabric, and there's more of a contrast here. You can see in the upper right the values are lighter. And I love this block because it reminds us that we don't always have to use sweet florals. This one has sort of an Asian feel, and the colors are very earth colors. So I'm having way too much fun with these ombres. Here's a quilt top, and it's not yet a quilt, obviously. And in this one I arrange the blocks again, arrange the strips again, so that the lighter areas in each block are in the upper right and the darker areas are in the lower left, so that when you put all the blocks together, you get this wonderful sense of a wash of light diagonally from the upper right to the lower left. And it couldn't be simpler. And then, of course, one of the best parts is picking the fabrics for the centers. So let me show you one other example with the Daiwabo. Here's one that gradates very dark, from very dark to quite bright light pink. So I wanted to use this to create a woven look. And this is just a cut and paste exercise, and I see that it's coming apart a little bit, but we don't care. So here I've made a very large block using as much of the width of the fabric as I can get to take advantage of those shifts in value and color. And it's a large block, but I think, and I've tried, I photographed it, took a digital shot, rotated and pasted it up in my on my computer, and it really does look woven. The trick is to get the visual flow from one area to the next when you rotate the blocks and put them together. Also, if you're going to do this kind of design, you need to change the orientation of the fabrics in the corner squares to make a four-patch where they would meet. One more quilt, and you saw this one when we talked about intensity. I was pointing out that the highly patterned, brighter floral fabrics in the circles seem to advance against the lesser low-intensity background fabrics. But now I want you to focus on the borders. You can almost get the sense that light is hitting the surface and skipping across the border. They were 4 different colorways of a Japanese fabric, an ombre fabric, and I also used them in the upper right triangles of each block. So if you look at those, there's a very subtle shift of value in those triangles, just enough to animate the quilt and give a sense of life to the blocks and to the quilt overall. Now your color study this time involves a tiny bit of sewing, and I want you to create a block like this one. You'll need to get an ombre fabric, let's move that, an ombre fabric, and you only need 1/8 of a yard, and then you need a center fabric, and you only need a chubby 1/8 of that piece. It's only a 6.5-inch square. And the PDF directions will tell you how to cut and attach the borders so that you get this sense of light coming from the upper right going down to the lower left. So I want to see these blocks because this is so dramatic, and it's a lot of fun, and then you'll have something sewn when you're done. So that's it for luster. Next time it's opalescence.